Sorry, cold brew. I'm Noah. You're listening to A Bite Of,
where we take our current favorite pop culture obsession and enjoy it one nibble at a time.
Our couple exception.
Cold brew.
Cold brew.
You hit me with that k sound and it threw me off.
Yeah, obviously the cold brew for us is kicking in. Hopefully it is for you because it's, depending on when you're listening to this, I hope you can drink cold brew. Because if it's at nighttime, then, I mean, you do you. Never mind. Whatever.
Well, some of us are very sensitive to caffeine, so if we drink cold brew too late at night, then we'll be up all evening thinking about the ghosts haunting us from Bly Manor.
I mean, I'm up all night anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Party animal.
Yeah, by like sitting there playing Overwatch or like editing these episodes.
Yeah, I kind of just like toss and turn, and then I'll like wake up and you'll just be like on like reading with a light or something like that, and then like
Yep. Mm-hmm. So we're in like the middle-ish of the show now, and things are getting real sad.
Really sad, but we're getting questions answered, right?
Oh, yeah.
But we're also getting more questions in general.
Right.
So,
but as always, spoiler warning. So if you've clicked on this episode and didn't listen to the last couple ones, sorry. Binge watch it like we're trying to do and recording, and then come back and listen.
There you go. Some sage advice from Noah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So let's just take one step back and talk a little bit about episode 6 of A Bite Of, when we talked about episode 3 of Bly Manor. Mm-hmm. And in that episode is when we get a lot of past and present stuff, and we really see the beginnings of what happened between Peter Quint and Miss Jessel.
Yeah, some very nasty things.
Yeah,
especially on PQ's side. We finally got to see Miss Jessel. We got to see who she is and her imprint that she made, or impression she made at Bly Manor, which was a fantastic one. Of course, she's a very brilliant, young, smart woman, and PQ is an asshole and manipulative, and I don't like him.
Me neither.
Right.
Yeah, he's awful. And so we see that sort of past backstory, and then we come back to the present when they're all kind of hanging out in the house because PQ tried to break in, and we have some good conversation between Jamie and Danny, and we think there might be a possible love connection there. Mm-hmm. And then we have this like ending scene where Miles goes, into his crazy little Miles mode. And we get a phone call that Owen's mother has passed away.
Mm-hmm. And then the last scene we see is Spectacle Man. Mm-hmm. The ghost that's haunting Danny and all the reflections. But now not in reflections. She's seeing him
out in the open.
Everywhere now.
Yeah.
And that's how it ends.
Right. With him getting vacuum sucked into the manor house for some reason.
I don't know why that would have happened, but I didn't like it.
It was weird. Yeah. It was weird. Unexplained.
The house was eating the ghost.
Right. It's where they go to be ghosts.
Yeah.
So come to this bite of The Haunting of Bly Manor, episode 4, The Way It Came. So similar to our last episode and the last episode of Bly Manor, there's a bit of back and forth between the past and the present.
As Mike Flanagan do.
As he do, yeah. And what's really interesting is that I was wondering, like, oh, well, this is going to be pretty straightforward this time around, because the last time in The Haunting of Hill House, it was so set as them as children, them as adults. So you knew you were going back and forth, back and forth. I'm like, well, this is going to be very linear. Ho, Derek. You are quite wrong.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not as, I guess it wouldn't be such a big time jump, because the only really big time jump is the narrator, which takes place in 2007, and where the actual story takes place, which is in the 80s.
Right.
So, but this time I believe we only went back a few years, maybe? There was no timestamp. It didn't say, so it was obviously before Danny gets to Bly Manor.
Exactly, exactly. And so what we learn is, so we're going to approach this episode like we did the last one. We're going to talk about the past portion of the episode first, and then talk about the present portion, even though it's all intermingling in the actual episode of the show. So this is where we get a bit of Danny's backstory. And what we learn, we actually get this really adorable scene of her as a little girl and a little boy with glasses, and they're talking about how they're best friends and they just want to hang out all the time together, and then cut to an engagement party.
Right, with the dude that has the spectacles.
Yes.
So right off the bat, you you've been seeing these glasses quite a bit throughout the show, and you're like, oh, now we have an alive face with these creepy spectacles.
Yeah.
And enter Edmund.
And enter Edmund. Yeah, and so we're able to put those pieces together, and we're like, ha. So we see them having an engagement party at his parents' house, and they're coming into the scene, and we see all these decorations and Danielle and Edmund and all this stuff, and he's giving a little speech about how they came to be, and she's looking uncomfortable, sitting there listening to him kind of talk about how he fell in love with her and when they were little and how they were meant to be. And then his mother takes her aside and offers her wedding dress.
Right. And we can, there's something that I guess we can infer from this that she essentially, Edmund's family was like a second home to her. And because we find out that, her mom was a deadbeat and her father passed away when she was Flora's age.
Yeah.
So it's very much, you can see that not only were they drawn together because Edmund's family took her in, but it's one of those natural things where like, opposite sex and the parents always push the kids together.
Yeah.
It was just that thing. And I think the reason why we saw her and Jamie kind of get a little close is you're seeing that, okay, maybe she's not straight. That she has to deal with, she likes women.
Yeah.
And you see that more in this engagement party. He if anybody would have told you that story and you were in love with him and you were okay with it, it would have been the sweetest thing in the world.
Exactly.
But she was just like, I just don't feel that way. Like maybe she didn't even remember that. You know what I mean? It's just like, I feel so bad for him and for her.
She just looks like she has this cloud of dread.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you could see it in her face, and she's cringing. And then when she's trying on the wedding, she's not trying it on, she's holding the wedding dress up to her in the mirror with the mom. And again, you could just see the pressure building, and she feels uncomfortable because it feels too personal. And for her, now knowing the backstory or the current story, you can see she feels like I'm a farce, and I'm taking these beautiful things from this family that I don't have the true feelings about that I should.
Right.
And it's weighing on her.
Yeah. We see a part where I guess they hemmed the dress and fixed it and tailored it. And obviously Edmund's mother, which is her second mother, she's there looking at it. And the woman that I guess did the tailoring, there's this weird, I wouldn't say weird, but there's this flirtatious nature between Danny and this tailor. Like she's kind of touching her, and the tailor says like, oh, you have such nice shoulders, you should wear your hair up. And you can see that Danny feels more comfortable in that. Like she likes that.
Yeah.
You didn't really see that with her and Edmund.
Yeah.
So again, you're starting to see, oh, she's really dealing with like the inner struggles of not being able to who she is. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Especially in, we're thinking a Midwestern town in the United States in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and especially like you said before, when you've been told your whole life you're going to marry Edmund.
Right.
That's what's expected of you in some sense. Then the next scene with her and Edmund is that they're out to dinner, and she's kind of in her mind, and the waiter comes and takes the plate, and she's like barely acknowledges it. She gets snapped back into it, and he's like, what's going on with you? And he's like, is everything okay? I know weddings can be stressful. And it starts off with this conversation, which quickly snowballs, where she's like, well, maybe it doesn't have to be a big thing. And he's like,
tiptoes to it.
Yeah. And then he's like, oh gosh, okay, no, I thought you were going to say you didn't want to get married. And then she does not reflexively go, no, of course I want to marry you. She just
That's all she needed to do. That's why she brought it up. I think she was trying to take it back a bit. And then once he said it, when somebody said it, she's like, yeah, kind of, I don't want to get married. You know, I mean, she's dealing with her own stuff. It's hard. I mean, she went through a terrible childhood. She isn't able to be who she can't love who she wants to love because she probably feels like it's wrong, or she wants to love Edmund. It's just not happening. Spoiler alert. If you don't like that sex, it usually doesn't happen.
Yeah. And there's sort of this sad moment when they get into the car after the dinner, and she's explaining this to him. She says, I thought if I waited long enough and if I went through with this, my feelings would change, and I don't know if they kind of leave it. It's a little ambiguous whether or not she actually comes out to him, or she's just breaking it off and saying that she doesn't have feelings for him that way.
Well, they didn't really break up. They broke off the marriage.
Right.
And it doesn't, at least in that conversation, there was nothing said to where, I don't love men.
Right.
It's just, I don't we're young. Like, I don't know if I want to get married, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And of course that sets him off because, I mean, if you're on this one path and there's been no indication otherwise, and then all of a sudden she's like, can we just like not get married? It's going to freak him out. But it's an interesting and it's a hard scene to even look at because I'm sure everybody's been in a situation like that where you're either on her end or you're on Edmund's end. And it's just like, it's not that I don't love you. It's just I don't love you that way, you know? And of course that sets him off. And she's trying to comfort him and trying to, you know, get past it. He gets out of the car and then gets smacked in the body with a giant truck.
Yeah, and we have that moment where the headlights are in his glasses. And then he's on the ground. Cut to the hospital. You know, there's sort of like, you know, a bit of a cliche scene where you don't really hear any of the voices. The doctor walks into the room with the family. You obviously know he gives them some news. Danny walks out. She's like having, you know, a breakdown. She goes into the bathroom. And then we have our first sighting of spectacle ghost Edmund.
Real quick from when he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's literally moments after he died.
Like, is his unfinished business is not walking down the aisle with her? Like,
Right.
That would suck, because I don't think she wants to.
It's not going to happen, Edmund.
No.
Not good at all.
Yeah.
And he's like in the stall behind her, and she, of course, freaks out.
And then funeral, sees him again, has a freak out at the funeral.
Yes.
And she's just not able to deal with it.
Yeah.
It's very clear that she, I mean, how, that must suck. Like, it's one thing if you spend your life with somebody and then you're going to get married and then you break it off and then something happens to him like years later. It's like, oh, that sucks, but you know, whatever. Literally, the night that they broke it off, he dies.
Moments
so
after.
the last thing that he knows of her is that she doesn't love me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God.
Something I've been thinking about is, so she's had this, you know, ghost all along, and it's not because of the manner that the ghost has been there. It happened immediately after he died. And I'm trying to grapple with this idea of, is it her own guilt that's keeping him around? Can she not forgive herself? And that's why he's standing there? Because at the funeral, when she's standing in front of the mirror, he's holding her. He has his hand on her shoulder and his other hand on her hip, and he won't let go of her. So what is it? Is it the guilt? Is it truly a ghost?
I mean, I think it's that. I mean, I think it's the guilt in that she can't get over it. I mean, there's so much pressure and guilt with her because of how it happened. I mean, it's one thing if it was just a normal accident, and I feel like she might have caused it because she made him get out of the car.
Yeah.
So of course she's going to feel guilty for that regardless, even though it was not her fault.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
And in our next scene, his mother comes to the door and she answers the door and she's like, we haven't seen you in a while. People are worried about you. We're all worried about you. I want you to know you're part of this family forever. Here's a lasagna.
And she's like, oh, my favorite.
Oh, and also Edmund's glasses.
Yeah. And she doesn't want to take them, but the mother's like, I can't throw them away, but I can't have them.
Yeah.
Like, you need to take them. She takes them.
And then they hug and a taxi pulls up and she's like, okay, bye-bye. And she slams the door in her face.
Yeah, she's like, thanks for the lasagna that I'm going to put in the fridge and never have because I'm going off to London. Bye.
I thought the same thing. She's like, son of a bitch, this thing's going to go bad in the fridge now.
What if when she comes back for her Tupperware? What's going to happen?
Danny. Just put it back on the porch. Just leave it there.
Thank
you.
Fuzzy lasagna, here you go.
And we see that she has a bunch of luggage there, and we know that she's now taking off to go to London. Back to present tense.
Yes.
At the manor.
Yeah, and so we have this scene where present Danny, she's getting dressed for the funeral, for Owen's mother's funeral, and Jamie comes in, and you can see that Danny's very uncomfortable with the whole thing, and pretty much Jamie's like, you don't have to go. Like, he'll understand. Also, he just met you, so it's fine.
Yeah.
If you don't go.
feel the pressure.
Right. So she's like, okay, thanks. And then she's like, can you help me get this dress off? Not because I want to do anything like nighttime activities with you, but because it's literally, I can't get it off. And then as she's taking it off, she sees Spectacle Guy in the mirror. It's like, cool. Cool. At the wrong moment, again, Spectacle Guy. And so that happens. She goes and finds Flora in the cemetery, which is never a cool place. You want to find a child just
giggling by herself.
Yeah, playing in the cemetery amongst the headstones, and doing that. What is that called? Where you get a paper and you put crayon over it?
Etchings.
Etchings?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But so I just think it's like, not that it's funny, but in the same sense, she's seen Spectacle Ghost a lot.
Yeah.
And every single time she's like,
Well, yeah, I would too.
not when your crush is unzipping your dress. Chill out, girl. Or close your eyes when the mirror's there.
The worst time. That's the worst time. That's like the equivalent of like your mom walking in or like your dog won't stop staring at you. It's like, okay, stop. I can't. Like, knock it off.
I'm not saying because they should have proceeded with things. I'm just saying like, because if you like her and you want things to go, okay, quit screaming all the time.
Well, it's Danny. She can't help it.
So she found Flora in the graveyard, and then she's like, okay, Flora, time to go in. You wet your pants. And then Flora's like, hey, British. So she runs into the chapel and they find Mrs. Groce there. And she's like, she said I wet my pants, but in England, pants are your underwear. So she said I'm a baby. And then Mrs. Groce is like, that is funny, you dumbass American.
Yeah.
And then Flora's like, well, you know what? To cheer you up, I'll do an etching for you right here on the floor of the chapel. And she does an etching, and then some other stuff happens, and then her and Mrs. Groce leave, and Danny cleans up, and there's a very clear shot of the etching is of a woman's name, Viola Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
But
which I'm calling right now is Kate Siegel. I'm just going to say.
Noah's been waiting for who Kate Siegel's going to be in this series.
Want her. Where's Theo?
Where's Theo?
Yeah. So I'm assuming that we're going to find out who this is at some point. And then cut to Mrs. Groce is making dinner. And she's like, I'm going to make Owen's favorite. We're going to have this. You know, this is what we're going to do. As she's making the dinner, you know, Danny sees Spectacle Guy again in the reflection of a reflective plate.
And he also like puts his hand on her waist.
Yeah, that was really creepy.
Yeah.
Did not like that.
No.
And so she's like, I need a minute. I'm going to leave. Bye. And she's walking, and then she looks over in the other room, and PQ's in the window, Peter Quint, just staring at her again.
Uh-huh.
And then she's like, oh, hell no. So she starts walking towards the front door, and he's following her the whole time. And then she gets that fire poker, and she's about to stab him through the door. And then it's Owen. Which
He's
is
like,
very odd to me. I don't trust it. Owen is starting to throw me off a little bit.
I think I know why.
Why was it was weird that PQ was walking in the same direction, and then she opens the door and it's Owen. And then they even made it a weird thing like, oh, you just had your mother's funeral. Why are you here? And also Miles said something, or it was either Miles or Flora, and she was like, oh, how'd you know he was coming? Mrs. Groce, you made his favorite meal.
Yeah.
Super weird.
I was thinking, see, that line meant to me that whenever Mrs. Groce is like floating off somewhere, she's having a premonition. So
maybe she's a sensitive one.
Right. So when she's floating off like in the church, she knows what's going to happen. And then that's why she's like, we're going to make his favorite dinner because he's going to end up here.
Maybe that's why she keeps seeing a crack. A crack is going to happen
at
some point. Because, I mean, in typical Mike Flanagan form, he likes to have a character that has some supernatural element outside of the whole supernatural whole. So like Theo in the last one, it would be really interesting to see like who has that in this one.
Yeah. And don't forget, as you turn the screw, things tighten and things start to crack and break.
You love that phrase.
It's so good.
It is. No, it is good. But
it's all a call back to it.
No, I love it. I love it too. But I love it.
Jeez Louise.
I love it. God, calm down.
Ay.
God.
So he comes there. They make shepherd's pie.
Is that the meal?
Yeah, because it stays in the refrigerator for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, that's his favorite meal. And they put a little bit of Marmite in the gravy.
Right. Yeah. And then a really weird conversation happens with Miles. He acts like a fucking dick again.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, Miss Clayton, I would like a glass of wine. And then they all brush it off like it's a joke. Like, ah, ha, 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 ha. No. This little boy was dead serious.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted a bloody glass of wine.
Yeah, he said the B equals to our F word.
Right.
At the dinner table.
They all thought he was joking because they were like, oh, Owen was like, yeah, my mom used to water it down. And then Danny was like, well, my mom didn't, but she still gave it to me. And then he flipped out about it. Super weird.
And then she was like, enough.
get the fuck to your fucking little room.
Yeah.
You little fuck shit.
And then he's like trying to be stubborn, and then she gives Flora a little flick of the head, and Flora's like, okay, good night, everyone.
Yeah. Time to go bye.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
So they go up to get ready, and something interesting happens while Danny is standing in Flora's room while she's brushing her teeth. Flora's house, little dollhouse, starts to open on its own.
Yeah, that's great.
And so Danny goes to it, she opens it, and she's looking at all the dolls, and we get a couple of glimpses of all the weird ones. And then we see Miles' room. The Miles doll is in Miles' bed, but there's also a male figure, like a male doll behind his wardrobe.
And in Flora's room, did you notice that Miss Jessel was in her room?
The real Miss Jessel.
No, the doll of Miss Jessel was
no,
in
I'm sorry. I meant the real Miss Jessel doll, not the scary doll that lives under her dresser.
Right. Yeah.
And because I get those confused, those two. And she takes the PQ doll out, and then Flora's like, please put it back. I have a very intricate system working, and you're ruining it.
I mean, I would have been the same way.
Yeah. Don't touch my stuff, lady.
Yeah. Who are you?
Yeah.
So next thing we get is a bonfire.
Mm-hmm.
And this scene, it's a very long monologue, really, and it's just really talking about grief. I feel like this whole episode was really just dissecting grief, or what great grief meant to different people. And Jamie talks about how bonfires, which come from bone fires, used to be ways that people would deal with grief.
Mm-hmm.
They would essentially put a bone or a memento of the lost one, and they would like say their piece and be done with it.
Right.
Love that system. I'm all for getting it out, getting it done, being done with it. And so we get to see everybody, except for Danny, give their piece to something. So you have Miss Jessel, not Miss Jessel. Jeez. I keep saying Miss Jessel when I say Miss Groce.
Well, Mrs. Groce, Miss Jessel.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm just going to cut that out. We see Mrs. Groce talk about Miss Jessel and how she was a brilliant woman, and why do bad things always happen to brilliant women. And then we have Jamie talk about, Dominic, which we find out that's the kid's father's name. And
Charlotte.
Couldn't remember her name. And then we get...
And she also does a really sweet thing, though, because she obviously has starting to have feelings for Danny, and she's like, and to take care of their kids, but there's Danny here now, and I'm sure that they would have loved her.
Yeah.
And then she goes, like, Danny, and Danny's like, no, thank you.
Yeah, I'm American. We don't do this. Sorry.
And then we get to Owen.
Yeah, and he just says his piece with his mom that, she was his anchor and then became his burden, and she had dementia. So it's just progressively getting worse and worse, which is really sad. It was a really sad thing and hard thing to hear, especially somebody talking about their mother passing away so soon after.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jamie and Danny go off to their little greenhouse to have a little talk, and pretty much Danny tells her what's been going on. I've been seeing my dead fiance poke his head around all the time, and she's like, is he here now? No. Okay, give me a smooch.
So then they smooch, but then guess what? He is here now.
Yeah, awful. And then...
Cut to Danny.
Yeah.
Freaking out.
Jamie does get a little upset.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. Because I think every time they try to be intimate or she tries to get closer, Danny screams.
Yeah.
Which would get frustrating for anybody. And then they walk back and they're like, okay, I'm going to go.
Good night.
This is too much.
And BT Dubs, this whole time, they each have their own bottle of wine that they're drinking by
I'm
the
here
fire.
for it.
And when they come back from that little awkward moment in the greenhouse, we see Owen saying to Mrs. Groce, can you picture it, Mrs. Groce in Paris, the two of us can go away together.
Yeah, it's so weird to me.
So whatever it is, and they still haven't said whether or not Mrs. Groce is married, and if he's living, if he's not living, where is he? He's not at the house.
That's what makes me feel weird about Owen. Because I feel like he would know, but also it's weird. She seems to be losing herself a lot. Whenever Danny first came to the bonfire, they're like, oh, Mrs. Groce, give Danny a bottle. And she was just sitting there. Mm-hmm. Like she didn't even realize it happened, like the first time we met her. So it's very odd. So if she is having premonitions, I'm curious to see what they are.
Yeah.
But she's and I don't know, Owen's just seeming a little weird with me with Mrs. Groce now.
There's also something else that's making me question things. So at the dinner, before Miles went bonkers, Flora has this big discussion with everybody about how she thought she was dead when her parents died, but she's not really dead. And it's like, are they all dead? Is this sort of an others thing?
No.
Are they all stuck there? How do they all keep, you know what I mean? He was just like, oh, I just arrived here. It's like
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe one of them
Yeah.
is, but I don't think that would be. It's been done too many times. Like the others and a lot of those things that pulled from this or pulled from old horror stories. I feel like that's a cop out, and I don't feel like that's Mike Flanagan's way of doing things. Especially look at the bent neck lady. I think that was a really good twist.
right.
So I hope not.
Yeah, but there's something about them all returning there all the time. They can't stop returning there. They keep showing up there, and they can't leave. So Jamie and Owen leave, and Danny is like, peace, gross. I'm going
she's
to
just
bed.
sitting there. I'm like, don't leave her by herself. There's clearly a ghost in the background.
Yeah. She's like, nah. So she goes to lay down, and she sees Edmund's glasses on her night table still.
Yeah, she gets frustrated.
Yeah.
She's drunk. She's like, you know what? I'm going to do what Jamie said, and I'm going to burn these glasses.
Right. And so as she leaves her room, we see Flora tossing and turning in her bed, and she looks at her dollhouse and is taking almost like a tally of who's supposed to be where. And she sees that Danny is not in her bed.
Yeah, and then she sees that creepy doll that's supposed to be under her dresser in the dollhouse.
Right.
And that's when she's like, Danny?
Yeah. She's like, Miles, we gotta go.
Yeah.
So Danny is getting the rest of a bottle of red wine because she's got some business to do at the bonfire. And then the kids appear out of nowhere. And they're like, hey, I had a bad dream, so why don't you just stand here in the hallway with me? And
they're clearly doing the classic, like, look at me, don't look anywhere else, and don't go anywhere else. Like, pay attention to me.
Stall.
Yeah, and you can tell she's making up the story on the spot.
And as they're talking to Danny, Danny's back is to the front foyer. And then we see this white, muddy dressed woman walking out the door. And then Flora's like, I need some milk. And Miles does a quick check and sees that she's gone. And then Danny gets the kids back to bed. And then as Danny's walking out the front door, she's like, Jesus Christ, these kids got mud everywhere again. But now we know it's that ghost that's tracking the mud all over the house.
Yeah.
Whomever that is.
Kate Siegel.
It's also Kate Siegel.
Yeah, it's Violet.
It's Viola?
Yeah.
Kate Siegel.
Whatever that name is, Kate Siegel.
It might be.
I feel like it has to be.
Oh, maybe she's... I'm thinking... Is it the mom?
No.
Oh.
Well, whoever Viola Lloyd is. I'm
right.
pretty
Oh,
sure
that's
her.
true. That's true. That's true.
Because remember, there's other ghosts in the house.
Yeah.
So who knows? And there's clearly a graveyard. I would never have a graveyard anywhere near my property. Like
Back in the day, you just buried your loved ones close to home.
Yeah. So
it was easier.
So then Danny is like, you know what? Peace. I'm going to be done with this. No more, headlight guy, glasses guy. I want to be with Jamie, whatever her motivations are. The glasses start burning, and then she's face to face with spectacles with Edmund. And he don't go away just because she's burning it. And I think it's interesting because it's the guilt. It's the grief. Like, you can't just toss it away. It doesn't work that easily. So there ain't no way, Danny, that you're just going to get rid of that stuff.
But Jamie said that's how they did it back in the day, so she thought she'd try.
Well, before things got so complicated with cars running over people.
Yeah, when it was the bubonic plague, you just burn some bones, you'd be over it. No big deal. And that's how the episode ends.
Yeah, I do have a few. So there are obviously some questions, but I'm curious because we still haven't really seen Mrs. Groce eat. And was she fake drinking that wine? Because she didn't act any different.
No.
Like, she wasn't drunk like all the other ones were clearly acting.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me.
Yeah, for some reason... Yeah, the alcohol is one thing. It's like maybe she doesn't want to cloud any vision she's having, but the food is another thing. That's really bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, the questions that keep coming back to me now are like, what is going on with Mrs. Groce? It's very interesting. Like, where does she go when she drifts off? Why isn't she eating? How did she know Owen was going to be there? Or did she know that she knew that Owen was going to be there?
And we've also never seen her room.
No.
She's always
in the house.
But you've seen almost every other room in the house, and she's always just going to bed. Like, there's something up.
For sure.
Yeah.
There's something up with, like, everybody in the house except for maybe Jamie.
Just because she's your favorite character.
Yeah. And Kate Siegel.
She's dead like the rest of them. They're all dead. Groce is dead. They're all dead.
They're not. Jeez. I can't wait. I mean, we're in the thick of it, and I really I want to be done with it, but I don't want to be done with it. You know, because then it's like, okay, I got to watch it again. That way I can process it all over again.
See all the little Easter eggs and everything like that.
Yeah, so next time we're going to cover this more, and I feel like stuff is going to start coming to a head.
Exciting. But first, we must get into Creepy Kids. So it is my turn to choose a creepy kid this week. And I have chosen Samara Morgan from The Ring.
I always forget that the Ring girl had a name.
Samara.
Well, yeah, I got that now. I just forget.
Yeah, and when I first saw that movie, it scared the crap out of me. I loved it, even though that horse jumped off that boat and got chopped up. Like, I was still okay with that movie. I love the way it was done. I love the creepy, aspect of her being this demon child who uses her photo telekinesis or whatever to make a videotape. And then what happens to you when she comes out of the TV?
That's not the 7 days one, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Days.
Yeah.
The phone rings.
Yeah. 7 days. No.
They should do it now. It's like Netflix. It's like streaming on Netflix, her video, and then she texts you, and then like Grubhub shows up and they kill you.
Oh my God. I know they made fun of that in Scary Movie. What did they do?
Oh, what did she say? Oh my God. She's like, Cindy, your TV's leaking. and then she beats the shit out of her. It's so
the phone rings at the same time too. And it's like 7 days. And it's like, what? 7 days. Like, what?
She's like, oh, hi, Grandma. She's like, I'll be there in 7 days.
Right. I love it.
Yeah, so good. But I love that movie. I love Samara as a creepy kid, living in her barn / in the well / never really dying. So good creepy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
On that note, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to A Bite of. Artwork and editing by our own Noah. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at A Bite of Pod and on Facebook at A Bite of. If you have questions, recommendations, or just want to say hi, you can email us at abiteofpod@gmail.com. You can find us on all podcast platforms. Please be sure to rate and review to spread the word. Hope you join us next time on A Bite of. Bye.